Have you ever wondered if you're settling for less than the life God intended for you? The Israelites witnessed miracles. They crossed the Red Sea. They experienced God's power, the 10 plagues, firsthand. Yet almost an entire generation died in the wilderness because fear kept them from stepping into God's promises. What if the greatest danger isn't failure? What if it's living safely? Today, we're going to discover why Caleb entered the promised land while everyone else walked in circles. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. This week's episode comes from a lesson that I recently taught at the Minister and Training Retreat in Spokane, Washington in June of 2026. It was a great time. There are about 20 young people there wanting to explore the idea of ministry, missions, and we had a great time just teaching. There was a lot of other great teachers there, Chris Schwarzenberger, Derek Vett, Brian Daly, and others who were just teaching some great material. And as I prepared this lesson, I realized something. The story really isn't about Caleb. It's about us. Every one of us eventually faces a choice. Will I follow fear or will I follow faith? Let's jump in. Don't die in the desert. God had a dream for Israel. When he brought them out of Egypt, he didn't rescue them just so that they could wander around the desert for 40 years. You know, think about that. I mean, it was like within 2 years that they got to the border of the promised land, it was like, boom, it's not that far, just distance-wise. Of course, moving 1 million people or a couple million people, that's a lot to do. You can't just like drive there in a day. But, it wasn't meant to spend 40 years there. God had a destination in mind. He promised to bring them into a land flowing with milk and honey. He'd promised that to Abraham. He told them that in advance. He said, for 400 years, your people will be enslaved, but I'm going to bring them out with great power. And he intended to bring them into a land of blessing, purpose, victory, and inheritance. But something really tragic happened. Most of them never made it. They were God's people. They experienced miracles. They crossed the Red Sea. They ate the manna from heaven. They saw God's power with their own eyes. They saw all the plagues happen to Pharaoh. Yet when the moment came to trust God and step into the future that he had prepared for them, fear won. The result was absolutely heartbreaking. Instead of entering the promised land, they spent the rest of their lives walking in circles in the desert until they died. Paul later reflects on their story in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. You should read that later. And he just says their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. They're scattered in the desert. Just so sad. You just kind of see these bodies out there. And he offers that as a warning. He just basically says all these things happened, for our sake, for us to learn a lesson, because Christ was with them as he is with us, and they allowed their fear to control them. They were delivered from Egypt, but never entered into all that God had planned for them. And I think that's a warning for every Christian. It's possible to be forgiven and still miss much of what God intended for your life. It's possible to spend years spinning in circles, controlled by fear, comfort, indecision, distraction, or unbelief. It's possible to make it to the end and realize you never fully stepped into the life God was actually calling you to live. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. But not everyone died in the desert. There's good news, okay? Most did, but a few made it. And they're the ones we need to imitate and follow up on. 2 guys actually made it, Joshua and Caleb. 45 years after the spies first entered Canaan, Caleb stood before Joshua at the age of 85, and he said, now give me this hill country. While an entire generation died wandering in the desert, Caleb was still dreaming, still conquering, still advancing, still receiving the promises of God. What made him different? We got to figure that out because we need to walk in his footsteps. What did he receive? Why did he receive the full measure of God's purpose while so many other people fell short? Today, I want to challenge you to become a faithful adventurer like Caleb, a man or a woman who goes anywhere, does anything, and trusts God enough to receive the life that he intended for you to live. Let's discover what made Caleb different. Number 1, Caleb saw what others could not see. Let's read Numbers 13. The Lord said to Moses, "Send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. From each ancestral tribe, send one of its leaders." So at the Lord's command, Moses sent them out from the desert of Paran. All of them were leaders of the Israelites, and these are their names. These are the names of the men Moses sent to explore the land. Moses gave Hoshea son of Nun the name Joshua. Verse 17. When Moses sent them to explore Canaan, he said, "Go up through the Negev and on into the hill country. See what the land is like and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How's the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land." It was the season for the first ripe grapes. So they went up and explored the land from the desert of Zin as far as Rehob toward Lebo Hamath. They went up through the Negev and came to Hebron, where Ahiman, Shishai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak, lived. Hebron had been built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. When they reached the valley of Eshcol, they cut off a branch bearing a single cluster of grapes. 2 of them carried it on a pole between them, along with the pomegranates and figs. That place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster of grapes the Israelites cut off there. At the end of 40 days, they returned from exploring the land. They came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. There, they reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account: "We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. But the people who live there are powerful. The cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan." Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it." But the men who'd gone up with him said, "We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are." And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they'd explored. They said, "The land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." Numbers 13. 12 spies, the same land, same giants, same facts. 10 saw obstacles, 2 saw God. In Numbers 13, verse 30, it says, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it." Caleb wasn't blind. He saw the giants. He saw them just like the other 11 saw. He simply factored God into the equation. He was like Moses. In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 27, it says about Moses, "By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible." Okay, so Moses was able to see the God who's invisible. Of course, he can't physically see him, but he saw him by faith. Like Paul said, we live by faith, not by sight. Faith is not denying reality. Faith sees reality, then adds God to it. Everyone else said, "We can't do it." Caleb said, "We can." Why? Because God was with him and with them. Here's the application. The greatest opportunities in your life will usually look impossible at first, whether that's planting a church, going overseas, leading a ministry, starting a campus ministry, leading your first Bible talk, building a marriage, raising a family, changing a city. The question is, will you focus on the giants or on God? Second point here is Caleb followed God wholeheartedly. In Numbers chapter 14 and verse 24, it says, "My servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly." This is the secret, not talent, not intelligence, not opportunity, wholeheartedness. Caleb for sure wasn't perfect. He seems kind of like a cantankerous kind of a character, but he was simply all in. He was just sold out for God. God can do amazing things with ordinary people who are completely surrendered to him. Caleb didn't ask, "Oh, what's the safest route? What should we do? I want to be careful. I want to have an abundance of caution." But what does God want? Over the years, God has called Pam to go to Egypt. Pam went to Egypt for about 9 months. We were in San Francisco together. That's where we got married. We planted a church in Portland, Oregon in 1991. We led the church in Seattle for a year in 1992 and part of 93. We moved overseas. We planted a church while we were living in Seattle. We planted a church and sent it out to Anchorage, Alaska in 92. That was awesome. Then in 93, we moved to Tokyo. We were there for 10 years. One of those years, we helped plant or replant a small church in Fukuoka, Japan, which is on the island of Kyushu in Japan. We came back in 2003. We led a church in Boise, Idaho for a year. And then we planted a church in Ashland, Oregon, in my hometown, and did that for 8 years. I sold real estate during that time. We built the church, started at my home, moved to a building. And then in 2012, we planted a church in Tucson, Arizona. While we were in Tucson, we planted a church in Flagstaff, Arizona. That was fun. And then we moved to Boston last year. Most of these places were never part of our original plan. I mean, I could just say, I never thought we'd be doing all of that stuff. Here's the thing. We just kept saying yes. We just said, okay, let's do it. We had a rubric for making decisions. Pam and I just consciously decided, we said, listen, if we're going to be asked, we're going to say yes. If we're asked, we're going to say yes. And one yes led to another. One adventure led to another. One step of faith led to another. And it's funny because I found out years later, after we got picked to Japan, we thought we were just like the most special people in the world to go to Japan. We're like, oh, this is so awesome. This is amazing. I found out years later from I don't know who, that we were actually the third round draft pick for going to Japan. 2 other couples had been asked before us. We were the I hope they say yes. And the other couples just said no. And they were great couples, super talented. But we went because 2 other couples said, no, we don't want to go. And I think that's been awesome. The Christian life is not primarily a career path. It's an adventure with God. And if you view it that way, it's so much more fun and exciting. I was talking to a longtime minister and I said, do you have any regrets about your career? And he said, I just wish we'd gone overseas. We had a chance to go and we said no. And I think that's true. There's going to be a lot of regrets. There can be a lot of regrets in your life, but it's often not the things you do, but it's the things you don't do, the things you say no to that leads to a lot of regret. And that's what this whole program's about, is living a no regrets life. And that's why this concept is so important. Life is an adventure with God. I think for, Pam, when she met me, I had a vision to go to Oregon. I was really pumped to go plant churches in my home state. Well, Pam barely even knew where Oregon was. And, she kind of had to decide it was a package deal. If she wanted to get together with me, that's my vision. That's where we're going to go. And so she goes, okay, I guess I can go to Oregon. And we ended up going to Oregon. But guess what? God also honored her dream to go back overseas. And we spent 10 years in Asia. And so I kind of interrupted her trip. She was on her way to go to Asia when we met in the summer of '89. And, she kind of had to just delay that dream because she was planning on going and planting churches in Asia. And she got, just basically let off the bus there in San Francisco. But she got her dream and she surrendered to God's dream. She ended up getting married and she got both. I got my dream. She got her dream. And guess what? Now we're back in her hometown of Boston, Massachusetts. Point number 3, Caleb refused to live a fear-based life. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action in spite of fear. Every major move that we've made involved a lot of fear. Japan, obviously, going to Japan was scary. We had a six-week-old kid. Okay, David was just born in San Francisco. Pam had just had him, and he's 6 weeks old. It's not 6 months old. It's not 6 years old. 6 weeks old. And, planting, just all these different things, very scary in different ways. Coming to Boston is like, okay, I've never lived on the East Coast. Every significant decision involved uncertainty. But I like what Teddy Roosevelt says, and I've read a couple of his biographies, and he talks about how he was able to overcome his fear because he's a super courageous guy. He said, there were all kinds of things of which I was afraid at first, from grizzly bears to mean horses to gunfighters. But by acting as if I was not afraid, I gradually ceased to be afraid. And that's really cool because he was the assistant secretary of the Navy. He was like 40 years old. He's a middle-aged man. He resigned from his post and he took a position on the Expeditionary Force to become a Rough Rider and lead a charge on San Juan Hill in Cuba and beating the Spanish in the Spanish Civil War, or Spanish-American War in like 1899 or 1902, something like that. But he was like totally fearless. A lot of people died by his side, but this guy just overcame his fear. How did he do it? By pretending to be courageous. Here's the practical advice. When fear appears, just recognize it, name it. Pray about it and move forward anyway. When you feel those jitters, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid. Don't view it as a sign that you shouldn't do it or that you just should stop. Just go, what am I feeling right? Ooh, I'm feeling afraid. I'm a little nervous. That's normal when you're doing something you've never done before. That's just that fear, that adrenaline is getting you prepared to go, okay, I need all of my energy to step up to this new challenge. And then just name it. Just go, okay, that's fear. Okay. I'm afraid that going to Japan, I don't know the language. I've got a 6-week-old. I don't know where we're living when we get there. Don't really know these people super well, but I'm just going to go anyway and trust that it's going to work out. and you pray about it, and then you just move forward. You just take the action. Don't let fear make the decisions for you. Let faith make your decisions. Just say yes. Many of the greatest blessings in your life are going to begin with a simple yes. Point number 4, Caleb never lost sight of the mission. In Joshua 14, in verse 6, it says, "Now the people of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal. And Caleb, son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, said to him, 'You know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh Barnea about you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land, and I brought him back a report according to my convictions. But my fellow Israelites who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt in fear. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. So on that day, Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked will be your inheritance and that of your children forever, because you followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Now then, just as the Lord promised, he has kept me alive for 45 years since the time he said this to Moses, while Israel moved about in the wilderness. So here I am today, 85 years old. I'm still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm still as vigorous to go out into battle as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there and their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. So Hebron has belonged to Caleb, son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, ever since, because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, wholeheartedly. Hebron used to be called Kiriath Arba, after Arba, who is the greatest man among the Anakites. Most of Caleb's generation died in the wilderness. Their lives became circles, not journeys. Caleb stayed focused. The mission never changed. He knew what his mission was. I got to take the land that God has promised me. Got to get in there. For us, the mission is also simple. Multiply disciples, multiply leaders, multiply churches. Everything else is secondary to that mission. Careers matter. Money matters, education matters, but they're just tools, not the mission. Keep the main thing the main thing. Don't fall for the shadow mission. If you stay focused on God's mission, your life is going to have extraordinary meaning. Remember hearing about the shadow mission? It's something that Paul Ortberg talked about in one of his books. He said he went to a retreat and they talked about the shadow mission. And there's so many different things that we can get involved in that we're good at, that we like doing, but they don't produce any good fruit. It's just a waste of time. Maybe we're really amazing at cornhole, or we do something else like, darts or something. It's good. It's fun. It's a nice diversion every once in a while. But if you build your life around it, that's a shadow mission. It's a mission, but it's not God's mission. I think when we went to Tucson, that was a real challenge because we had to figure, okay, what's our mission here? Like, we'd already planted a church in Ashland, Oregon, which was great. And I brought my family out. They were not open at the time, but they'd had the chance. I didn't have any regrets because I built a church where they could reach it. We'd saved a lot of people. But I felt like my ultimate mission was to preach the word, to be an evangelist, imitate Paul, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. I wanted to continue to plant more churches. So I'd been 8 years in Ashland, could have stayed there, would have definitely been a multimillionaire in real estate. And it was tempting. Greed definitely called my name, like, hey, if you stay here, you're going to be super wealthy. But I decided to go to Tucson. I'm glad I did, because even though real estate was a great tool, it wasn't really my ultimate calling. It wasn't my vocation. It wasn't what I believe God brought me onto this earth to do. It's just a tool. Basically, it started out as a tool to pay the bills so I could get a church off the ground. It was just a method. And sometimes for younger people, especially, you feel like, oh, I got to go to the right school. I got to get this job. It means everything. You spend all your time at your work. And I go, that's fine. But once that job becomes all consuming, you spend so much time there, that's becoming like a shadow mission. That's becoming like a God. And you lose sight of the mission that God has placed in your life. Point number 5, Caleb stayed strong. Joshua 14, verse 11, I'm still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. Okay, this is remarkable. He's 85 years old, and he's got both spiritual strength and physical strength and mental strength. He's determined. He's fired up. He says, I'm still strong, 85 years old. What does this point to? Your body matters. You only get one body. Take care of it. Exercise, eat well, sleep, stay healthy. Not because appearance is everything, but because your body is it's a tool for the mission. And if you don't take care of your body, you won't be able to accomplish the mission. You've got to, I like this quote. I think it's from Richie Norton. He said, you got to make it a priority to make your priorities a priority. For people who don't exercise and don't watch their weight and stuff like that, oftentimes like, oh, I don't have time, I'm too busy doing this and that. I go, listen, that's just an excuse. You got to make a priority out of your priorities. You just got to decide, this is what I need to be a good steward to the one body God gave me. And so take care of yourself, man. Go to the gym, go for walks. You don't need to have, a six pack to be effective, but make sure that you're really taking care of yourself so you can be useful at 85. I mean, I think again about Al Barrett. The guy's 85, still preaching the word, takes care of his body, and he's doing a good job. He's still strong. Okay. Point number 6, Caleb finished without regret. Most people have heard the famous study of the 5 regrets of the dying. And this really impacted me when I first read it. The common regrets of people, and this lady, she interviewed people in a nursing home. The first regret, I wish I'd had the courage to live true to myself. Second regret, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 3, I wish I'd expressed my feelings. Next one, I wish I'd stayed connected to friends. And finally, I wish I'd let myself be happier. Very few people regret taking bold risks for something meaningful, but a lot of people regret playing it safe. And that's what these people are saying. It's like, man, I wish I would just not work so much, enjoyed life a little bit more, express myself, not been so afraid about what people thought. Caleb refused to go with the crowd. He followed his convictions. That's what he said. He said everyone else, all those 10, imagine 10 against him and Joshua, they all said the same thing. We can't do it. We're going to lose. We got to quit. We got to go back. And he said, nope. I brought back a report according to my convictions. We can certainly do it. Yes, there's giants, but we can do it. He didn't allow himself to be overcome by peer pressure. He followed his convictions. He expressed his feelings. He lived true to himself. He says, I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land, and I brought him back a report according to my convictions. But my fellow Israelites who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt in fear. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. In Psalm chapter 90, in verse 12, in the Psalm of Moses says, teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. What does it teach? Life is short. The years are flying by. You only get one shot at this life, so don't waste it. Live this life according to your convictions, not the crowd. Don't let 10 other people say, oh, we should go this way. You go, okay, I guess I'm going to do that. Don't do that. Point number 7, practical principles for faithful adventurers. First, read like your life depends on it. Leaders or learners, grow constantly. Elon Musk reportedly taught himself much of rocket science by reading books. He just picked up 4 books on rocket science. He read it. Now he's a chief engineer of SpaceX. I go, he didn't delegate it to someone else. He just found some books on it, learned it, talked to people who were doing rocket science, and just did it. You can learn anything. Be a reader. Be curious. Be growing. Next, get comfortable with failure. When I planted Ashland, Oregon, I knew it could fail. In fact, that's why I didn't take a team with me except my family, because I knew I might have to shut it down. It just may fail, and I was okay with that. I was totally at peace with that. I could live with failure. What I couldn't live with was regret, knowing that I hadn't done everything I could to reach my physical family. Many people fear failure. You should fear never trying. Okay, next point. Save 10% of everything you own. Okay, start young. Set it and forget it. Money is a tool. It's a wonderful servant. It's a terrible master. Tithe 10% to God. Tithe and keep 10% for yourself. Financial freedom creates ministry freedom. If you're in your 40s, okay, and you haven't saved any for retirement, guess what? 20% of your money needs to go into a retirement account. You just go, okay, you spent it on the kids. I understand that, no problem. You can still retire if you start saving 20% right now. And you can do it. You just got to be bold about it. Conclusion, give me this hill country. When Caleb was 40 years old, he stood at the edge of the promised land and he said, we can certainly do it. 45 years later, at age 85, he stood before Joshua and said, now give me this hill country. The years had not weakened his faith. The wilderness had not diminished his vision. The giants had not intimidated his courage. He was still the same man, wholeheartedly devoted to God, filled with faith, focused on the mission, and eager for the next adventure. And because of that, he received what God had promised. The tragedy of Numbers 13 and 14 is not that Israel lacked opportunity. The tragedy is that they had the same opportunity Caleb had. They saw the same land. They heard the same promises. They brought back the grapes. They witnessed the same miracles in Egypt, but fear kept them from experiencing God's best. Don't let that happen to you. You are the architect of your future. You are deciding where you will live, who you will marry, what risks you will take, what dreams you will pursue, whether you follow comfort or calling. Don't spend your life walking in circles in the desert thinking, I wish I would have gone forward with that decision. Don't settle for comfort when God is calling you to courage. Don't allow fear to make decisions that faith should make. Don't stop dreaming. Don't stop growing. Don't stop saying yes to God. One day you're going to look back on your life, and my prayer is that you won't merely be able to say, I was forgiven. That's awesome right there. My prayer is that you'll be able to say, I lived the life that God intended for me. I took the risks. I answered the call. I went where He sent me. I gave Him everything. And when your life is over, you may stand before God, having received not only the eternal life He promised, but also the rich, purposeful, adventurous life He intended for you here on earth. Be a faithful adventurer. Follow God wholeheartedly. And when your opportunity comes, have the faith to say, now give me this hill country. Thanks for listening. Here's how you can help support the program. First, read and review one of my books. I just wrote a book called Before You Quit. Before that, it was The 10X Christian. I've written 4 books now. You can find them all on Amazon.com or my website, robskinner.com. You can also support this ministry financially by the link in the show notes. Really easy to give, because my goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day and make this life count.